Welcome everyone to another episode of TLDR. Hey Sebastian, how are you doing? Long time.
Long time no see. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm excited about this one.
Oh yeah, me too. I missed you. I've seen you had a lot of other guests while I was gone. Glad to be back. I'm super glad to be back. So yeah, I think we have a really interesting one, basically catered for our MSP customers, also resellers, I think. And yeah, and kind of touching base on the format. You all know, TLDR was intended to be kind of a snackable session where we kind of guide you through some important stuff that we mainly hear from you. This is not no different. Okay, we decided to do this session after we had numerous meetings with our MSP customers, and we kind of saw that there's a kind of a pattern of questions coming back again and again, and we decided, you know what, let's dedicate an episode for MSPs and basically kind of educate you more about how you can work with N2W and kind of go more granular into the values that we can bring you and your audience. So yeah, I mean, why now? Is a growth opportunity besides us being a minute from Q2 where everybody already has budget lined up. All the sales kickoffs took place in Q1. Customers are, about to commit, and they have project already planned out for the year. So yeah, I mean, the obvious one, which you probably all know, data is exploding pretty much everywhere. Okay. Obviously, AI does a lot of great help in exponentially grow the data that is being stored or is just reality. Of course, threat escalation. As much as we say on and on, cloud is the new normal. Threat is also there, and we've seen in 2023, 2024 some really, really big attacks and surprises that came out of threats. The threat continues to grow, so it's another opportunity. The industry vulnerability. So obviously, talking about the threats, the common suspects are the healthcare and finance industries, and also manufacturing, who's been a threat consistently in the past few years with regards to vulnerabilities in the cloud. So yeah, I mean this has been a huge one. Compliance and retention. Compliance and retention. We've seen the new compliance regulation coming out with DORA. We all know that HIPAA is about to kind of roll out some new regulations. So everything in the regulated space also kind of dictates new changes and growth opportunities for working together with N2WS. The cloud complexity. So, touching upon what I've said earlier with last year, CrowdStrike being one of the main attacks that was, very notable. People started rethinking about, maybe having another copy of their backup in a different cloud. So, everybody's starting to think about, okay, how do we do cross-cloud backup? So that also becomes a very interesting growth opportunity, which we've addressed last year and this year. And last but not least, or even the most important, is your IT burnout. Sebastian here did with, I think, with Andrew Reeves, was it?
Mm. Right.
I think the last session that we had, talking about the burnout of cybersecurity and IT teams when they're dealing with numerous threats, the toll that it takes for them to protect the organization. You don't want to have those important people being burned out with their everyday tasks, and you want to make sure that they're in the right spot and you can help them out, and they're equipped to have everything that they need in order to help your organization. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of the growth opportunities. Sebastian, feel free to add if you
Well,
have anything
I
else.
completely agree, 100%. I mean, MSPs are mission critical. And why is that? Because experts are always in demand, especially in tech. Let's face it, we're smack dab in the middle of an exponential data explosion. You're absolutely right. I mean, databases are ballooning faster than Netflix is canceling good shows. And data lakes, they're now vast oceans. So remember when a 10 gigabyte database in RDS was considered absolutely massive back in 2017, today 10 gigabytes is barely qualifies as a glorified test environment. And then you combine that with the nonstop onslaught of ransomware gangs, malicious actors, security breaches. You've got a
Yeah.
recipe for sleepless nights and disaster-induced ulcers. So I think it's really important to turn to genuine experts, and those genuine experts are the MSPs. I mean, think of it this way. Imagine your beloved car breaks down and your buddy Chad, who once watched a car repair video on YouTube, offers to fix it in exchange for a case of beer. Sounds tempting at first, but wrong. Chad doesn't know his alternator from his airbag, and trusting him is just begging for trouble. It's
Yeah.
exactly the same thing in tech. You need somebody who really knows what they're doing. MSPs are your qualified mechanic for data. They have the specialized
Yeah.
expertise, proven track record. I would say they are the John Wicks of IT, and that's the message you need to convey to your customers when you're an MSP and your prospective customers, that you have an excellent taste in suits and firearms. And this will really get you the credibility that you need with your customers.
Yeah. I mean, you're spot on. I think that this slide, we put some numbers here, but essentially, I think, I kind of spread them all out. I think that, our customers or the audience that we're doing this for can teach us and tell us those numbers. I think they live and breathe the growth prediction in kind of that specific sector and how it's going to continue. So, you know, obviously some staggering numbers with how the growth of backup and the adoption. So those numbers, I'm pretty sure most of the audience, if you're in this space, you know them better than we do. Okay, so yeah, I think we'll just dive into it because I think we have a kind of a long agenda to go through in this session, and we basically kind of broke it down into 6 topics. So essentially, we picked the 6 topics that we think will be super relevant for you with N2W. We're going to talk through them a little bit. Sebastian is going to walk through a quick demo on every one of them. But these slides obviously are going to be shared, and it's a resource that will come out of this session that you can then use and take it with you to your end customers when you kind of pitch N2W. So we broke it down into 6 topics: onboarding, security, multi-tenancy, cost-effective storage, reporting, and compliance. We're kind of going to tackle them one by one. Okay. Anything else before we dive in?
No, sounds good. Let's do it.
All right, let's do this. All right. First and foremost, it's the efficient onboarding. So again, Sebastian, you're in your MSP, or we're onboarding a new MSP. We want to show value from day one. Walk us through how it's being done.
So yes, I think this is a good place to start. Day one, onboarding. A new customer means new revenue. So onboarding isn't just about speed, it's about delivering real value right from the start. And
Mhm.
blindly dumping a massive pile of resources into a backup tool, that's not a value proposition. It's just an unstructured mess waiting to cause headaches down the road. And N2WS, on the other hand, does it differently. We offer fine-grained automated structuring of backup resources, ensuring that backup policies are created intelligently from the get-go, so there's no need to waste time fixing the inevitable mistakes that come with bulk imports and other solutions, because we eliminate them before they even happen. And this is where tagging comes into play. So the way this works is you can just simply create tags for the resources. And this can be based on even existing tags. So you don't have to start at that
Yeah.
ground zero to create these tags. I can guarantee you that every large business or even medium-sized business already has tags. Who's the owner of a resource? What's the application stack? Who's going to pay for it? The cost center. Well,
Mhm.
all of these tags, they're identifiers, and you can use these identifiers not just to dump everything, every resource into a catch-all backup policy, but then use those existing tags to zero in how should everything be backed up. So It's a single pane of glass. All of the different customers that you have, you're going to define them here under accounts. The first thing that you have to pay attention to is that you need to turn tagging on. The way this works is just choose one of the accounts, and it's right here, scan resources. What this means is we're going to look at the tags that they're in customers' environments. We can limit this to certain regions if you want to, or we can even limit this to certain resource types. But of course, if your customer has all of these different resource types, EC2 instances, volumes, DocumentDB, Dynamo, gosh, you see them all, just simply turn them on. It's one click and they're all turned on. What's going to happen is we're actually going to look for the tags that you have on those resources. All right, so let me show you then how do I define this? So now we're just looking at the tags, but now the next part is where we define which tag are we going to use for the different backup policies. So the backup policies can be pre-created from gold standard policies. That's pretty simple. We do the same thing with tags. But what you want to take a look at is the more options tab. If you scroll down, see right there, custom tags. So you can define as many as you want. So if you have 10 different tags, you can fine tune, hone in on specific ones. So I have, hey, it's a department finance. So the next one, the next policy that I would create is then, oh, the department is HR or research and development or QA testing, you name it. And as I said, these can be combined. So I could say, well, it must have a department tag and on top of it, a cost center for R&D. And this is how I can fine tune all of these different policies to exactly do what I want them to do. Another thing that's really important is people usually get all engrossed in the intricacies of configuring this. Oh, for example, application consistent backups on database servers. Yes, I do want this. And then I spend a lot of time configuring them. This is something else that you can do through the tags as well. Actually have the ability to send commands through the tagging. So for example, if I have a tag and I just do hashtag app consist, that's then going to force those resources that I'm tagging with this to be backed up in an application consistent manner. There's a whole bunch of features. There's literally an entire page in our user guide where I can use tags to automatically create the configuration. So you see what the advantage here is. I'm not just creating one catch-all policy. Yes, so everything is being backed up, and then later the customer is going to come to me and say, "Okay, so can you show me my databases? Can you show me my file servers?" No, they're all in one single policy. That's a recipe for disaster. So you want to use tagging, and you want to very specific how you set this up, and this can be done in day one. Because as I mentioned, so if you set an account to allow scanning for resources, that's going to happen one time. It's immediately going to import everything, but in an organized fashion so that everything is going to be backed up in its own policies.
Let's go. Topic number 2. Important one, ransomware protection or security for that matter. How can MSPs leverage our immutability capabilities, and what are the kind of the best practices that you recommend for MSPs when we're getting started with a new customer?
It's the buzzword, and I would say it's even more than a buzzword. It's a reality. So ransomware protection, everybody talks about ransomware. And the DR retention, separation, effortless immutability, because true security isn't just about having backups. It's about making sure they can't be touched. And we're going to break down how to achieve disaster recovery at a fraction of the cost of traditional layered backups. Because generally people think, oh, if I have layered backups, I put my backups into different locations, that's going to raise my backup cost. No, you don't have to do this. But at the same time, lowering a cost doesn't mean that you're sacrificing security. So your DR backups stay protected, locked down with impenetrable immutability, ensuring no ransomware, rogue admin, or whoops moment can wipe them out.
Yep.
And speaking of ransomware, let's stop pretending it's just a possibility. Too many people are still thinking, well, yeah, I'm being really careful. It's a certainty. And that's why Another feature that we have, Secure DR, an exclusive N2WS feature, delivers continuous penetration checks and round-the-clock protection for your most valued cloud environments, because the best time to find a vulnerability is before someone else does.
Yep.
Again,
Yep.
I can show you how this is configured so that the people who are watching this immediately know where to go and what to do. Ransomware protection. The first one is the Secure DR. I just mentioned this. So Secure DR is a feature that once again, you're going to find under your accounts. So if I go into one of my accounts here, see over here, Secure DR account. What this means is I'm sure there are some permissions that you find objectionable. So if I look at my prohibited permissions, so for show and tell, I usually do delete snapshot. I don't want anybody being able to delete my snapshots, my backups.
Yeah.
So this is why we're going to monitor for this. And this can be done for all of the different services, even different features. So what's going to happen is we're not just going to look at the role or the user that we're using to access data within the account. No. We're actually looking at the entire account. So we're continuously monitoring that account for these objectionable prohibited permissions. What that means is if somebody hacks you, they're not going to go for the root admin account. They're going to go for seldomly used users, and they're going to sneak in permissions, perhaps one by one. And this Secure DR feature is going to notice this. So if somebody is trying to sneak in permissions and suddenly they appear, you're going to find out about it. It will immediately let you know. So Secure DR, super important feature, because this will constantly save your back, because it will constantly, continually monitor these accounts for sudden changes in permissions. That's one thing. The other thing is immutability. I'm sure some of the viewers of this TLDR, they live in the States. And when you live in the States, have you ever been to a bank? There's a sign which says, even if you break in, we cannot open the vault. That's essentially immutability for your money. This now here, that's immutability for your data. And I'll show you how that is set up. So when you go into a backup policy, the best way to protect your data is to make sure that even if the worst case happened, the bank robbers come into your bank, they're not going to be able to do anything. And the way you do this is if you set your backups, and those are the generations where I want to keep them. Storage repository works exactly the same way, but the tick box that you're interested in is right here. Select this. That's going to apply a compliance lock to the backups, which means that even if somebody were to do the absolute unimaginable, the worst case scenario, they're going to take control of your AWS account or your Azure account. It's not going to make any difference because they cannot delete the backups. Even AWS itself cannot delete the backups. So that's why when I turn this on, it's going to say, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to set these backups for X amount of days, and you're not going to be able to delete them once you hit the save button. So be careful with this, because you can also set this for a very long time. Keep in mind, even AWS cannot delete them. So this is why we protect you from this. The other is the DR retention. So as I mentioned, you do have the ability to define, I don't want to keep DRs the same amount of time that I want to keep my backups. I would say 95% of the people who are going to watch this, they're going to say, well, my retention is 30 days. Okay, let's say a DR situation happens. Not the regular, hey, can you get me a file or a folder, or, oh, a volume is corrupted. Can you bring this back? Now, that's your day-to-day stuff. DR retention, well, that's when somebody says, oh, an entire region just went bye-bye. Or somebody reached our account. We are in a situation where we need to fall back on our DR backups. If that happens, you're not going to go back to a backup that's 28 days old. In a DR situation, you're going to go back to, well, the last backup or maybe the one before that. So why keep the same amount of backups in your DR region? That's going to double your backup cost. You don't want that. And that's value that you can offer to your customers. You can provide them that DR security without the DR cost. So in this case, what we can do is we can have a different retention for DR backups. Yeah, I'm going to keep 1, 2, 3, and added bonus, I can then make sure that those 3, 2, 1 backups that I'm going to keep in my DR region, I'm going to make them compliance lock as well. So that means nobody can touch them. And again, it's going to alert you to the fact that, okay, if you click this for 3 days or 2 days or one day, whichever you set, you're not going to be able to make any changes to this. So this is really the ultimate security. Make sure, one, to perform secure DR. Now that's going to allow you to monitor the accounts for the permissions, and then also make sure that you have compliance lock turned on so nobody can make any changes to it. And bonus, you can tell your customers, yes, we're going to offer you that security, that DR security without the DR cost. And that's really what everybody wants.
Next on the list, we have an important topic, especially for MSPs, which
Mhm.
is the multi-tenancy. Essentially, how or what's the best way to use our centralized console for multiple customers? Like, how do you able to streamline processes and maintain the clear separation of duties? I think that's an important question for MSPs. So yeah, take us through it.
So multi-tenancy, super important. I sometimes people ask about it. Oh, okay, it is possible, but they don't really make truly use. This is why we call this slide the true multi-tenancy. So
Yeah.
NWS delivers true multi-tenancy. So giving MSPs the ability to fully separate customer environments while managing everything from a single centralized console. No awkward workarounds, no compromise on security. And scaling is also no problem. As you onboard more customers, performance stays rock solid. So you're not stuck dealing with bottlenecks. And even better, let customers handle their own management in a dedicated self-service portal. They get access to their own resources in their own space on their own time, which means less babysitting, fewer hand-holding sessions, and more time for your team to focus on providing real value to your
Mhm.
customers. So don't be afraid to let go. Show your value where it really matters. So the multi-tenancy isn't just, oh, I'm going to keep it in my realm and I'm going to do everything. There are some customers who like that, but there's other customers who are saying, well, that takes my freedom away. So let me show you how that works as well. Multi-tenancy. The first step is take a look at the accounts that you can create. So everything within N2WS has ownership. We can create virtual fences around resources. That means your customers will be able to log into the N2WS portal, but they wouldn't even be able to see anything else that anybody else is performing backups of. There is a clear delineation. Everything has ownership. See right here, the users, everything has ownership. So that's why when you create users for that multi-tenancy in your environment, don't hold back. We have the ability to create different types of users, actually 4 different types. The first one is we can create root admin users. The next one is we can create managed users. Managed users, those are the customers who are saying, I want you to do it for me, but I do want to have the ability to actually see and maybe run my own reports. So that means you still need the ability to kind of sort of look over their shoulders, set things up for them. And you're providing value to them, which is great. You also have the option, depending on how you create your invoices, you even have the option to create quotas for your customers. You can limit what type of features they have access to. Uh, Add-on features, maybe. So this allows you to actually very precisely create users and what they're allowed to do. The next type of user that we have is the independent user. Those are the customers who say, no, 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 security and true security is the most important thing for me. I can handle this, I can do it myself. And you would be surprised how many customers want this. I mean, especially if you're talking about government, financial verticals, healthcare verticals, they need to have the ability to perform backups without the MSP having access to that data. Yes, you can still run your reports so that you can create invoices for them, but think of it this way. This also makes sure that you can say, oh, they're an independent user and I don't have to provide the compliance reports because they can create their compliance reports themselves. Added security for your customer and less overhead for you. So always think about this. These independent users, they can create backups, but you as the root admin can only see that they're creating backups. You wouldn't even know what the name of the server is that they're backing up. So you see where this is really important as well. And then last but not least, you also have the ability to create delegates. So once you create your users, you can, the way I would do this, if we're doing this with best practice, I would just create either managed or independent users with the header as the name of the company that you're dealing with. Underneath those users, you can then create delegates. So this means if I have different backup users, think of the database admin who wants to perform development work on a database Sunday morning at 3 a.m. Well, I can actually allow them to log into this console, only see their resources and nothing else. And you do this with creating delegations. And within these delegations, you then also have the ability to choose, well, what are these delegates of that particular resource allowed to do? Are they allowed to perform recovery, or maybe I just want to create an audit account. So an account where somebody can log in, retrieve the audit reports, which we'll talk about in a moment, and then I don't need to give them access to anything else. Another thing that's really interesting is, remember that database admin I talked about? So that database admin, if I have, let's say, an RDS database, they're really expensive, especially the really large ones. Well, why would I want to run development instances when they're not needed? So obviously, we're going to turn them off, which is a feature that's already in NWS Backup and Recovery. But that database admin who needs to have access, well, how am I going to allow him access to turn on those resources? I don't want to give him access to my AWS console. So here within N2WS, I can actually overwrite this as well. That's the resource control feature that we have that then allows you to allow certain users to do certain things. So I think all in all, it's essentially learn to let go. Find which customers really want that hand holding and which customers want that more freedom, that security. And this is where you are the ones that provide the value then.
Mhm. So now I'm going to a really big one, I guess. And this is an all-time favorite, and I think one of the most attractive capabilities in the product. Cutting costs. Okay, it's kind of the win-win here. So I think that the main thing here, and not to use too many marketing fluff, is actually to go through a real use case with customers and show an example of how we do this with real numbers and like, real customers. So yeah, take us through this and let's go see how it works.
Sure. I mean, slashing and lowering backup expenses means higher profit margins for you and your customers, a true win-win. We'll show you how to cut the backup costs by up to 92% without sacrificing any recoverability. And that's real value. That's how you can become irreplaceable, not by holding customers' hands through every single task, but delivering smarter, more cost-efficient solutions that make their lives and budgets easier. Trust me, they see that. They see the true value here.
Yeah.
So let me show you what you can do. Oh, you already have them. Yes, let's show the slides how this appears, and then I'll show you how to implement this.
Yeah, I think this is the I think what we had a session a while back, but I think this is an important one. This is a
Mhm.
real life example where we had a customer. We were going through kind of a sales process, and we did the evaluation. AWS backup was in this case the solution that we worked against, and right off the bat, the cost per license between us and AWS is very apparent because AWS backup is supposedly a free tool. So essentially, the zero for the on AWS, you pay zero for the license. In our case, this is an enterprise license, so it was 12K a year, so it's annual. But then this is where the surprise comes, right? It's where, when you're using AWS backup with the same amount of data regions that they had, the calculation came out as $93,000 for the year, where if you used essentially N2W, and you'll go through why we had such a big TCO capability, such a big savings. here is essentially the standard tiers. Can you elaborate a little bit about this?
So I always joke, there's a reason why Jeff Bezos has his own space program. It's basically just storage. It's based on the storage that you have. And the way AWS does it is they say, yes, there's a free tool, it's going to perform all the backups. But on the back end, this free tool, it doesn't work with the intention to save you money. No, no, they're giving you the absolute bare minimum. So when, for example, if they create the archives, they're always going to be full archives, and they're going to put them
Yeah,
into the most inappropriate standard tier.
yeah,
And we don't have that. So that's why we allow people to store it in whichever makes the most sense for them.
yeah. I think this is kind of what you were talking about, like the difference
Exactly.
between how they do the archive versus how we do the archive, and where the saving is coming from. And for those, who haven't heard or hadn't had a chance to hear, that we are already starting doing the same similar cost savings for Azure as well. So it's not just AWS, essentially.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Azure Backup is exactly the same thing. Azure Backup essentially says, well, it's a kind of sort of free tool. So it's very simple. They say it's $5 per instance. Great. But then when you take a look at the fine print, it's going to say, yes, $5 per VM if your VM isn't larger than 50 gigs. Well, I don't have any production environment instances that are smaller than 50 gigs. Nobody does. So then you're in the next tier, that means $10 per instance. Okay. And then if your instance is even bigger than 500 gigs, then they really go into, oh, this is how we can make money mode. Because then they're going to start charging you $10 for every 500 gig increment. So this example that we have right here on this slide, this isn't something that we came up. This is literally in the fine print of Azure Backup, where they say if you have a 1.2 terabyte instance, see how this just slides a little bit over the next 500 gig increment,
Yeah.
they're going to start charging you $30 per instance. That means if I have 122 instances, then not only is it, oh, it's 120 times time whatever the price is per instance. No, with Azure Backup, this can be wildly different, anywhere between $5 to $30 to $50. You'll never know what your price is going to be. It just gets far too confusing. And that's totally different with AWS. Makes no difference what the size of an instance is. It's $5 per instance.
And then the long-term retention here, I guess. And this is a significant amount of cost savings.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so how can I make this happen? How can I actually archive data and make it still accessible? It's actually super simple, super easy to do. So if I go back into my backup policy, lifecycle management, that's where the savings are happening. So remember earlier when I mentioned your backups that you actually need, the day-to-day recovery requests that you might get. I'm missing a file or a folder, or a volume is corrupted, or hey, somebody accidentally deleted an instance. Okay, how often does that actually happen? And how often does it happen that somebody says, I need data from 28 days ago? Well, okay, so then that means I want to lower the cost for the most premium storage. That's the snapshots. Remember, that's what pays for rockets. So you want to keep that number as low as possible. So what I would do then is a week. That's a realistic recovery that is almost near instantaneous from my snapshots. Remember, we talked about DR. I just need one backup for my DR, but I do want to keep the data for longer. Okay, so then if I keep scrolling down, I have other ever increasingly colder storage tiers available. And this is the freedom that no other built-in backup solution is going to give you. There is no ever increasingly colder and giving you the choice where that should be. So if you turn on storage repository, then you probably want to keep it in a lukewarm format for, let's say, a month. And then cold storage, okay, I'm going to use that after a month. So you can see where I'm going with this. Ever increasingly, the data gets colder and it takes slightly longer to recover each step, but the savings are tremendous. So then if I say I'm going to keep the data in real cold storage for an extended period of time, Down here, this is where you choose where we're going to store this data. A, we can store the data in S3, regular S3 buckets. We can make them immutable, or you can even do cross-cloud storage. That's that tick box that auditor is going to look for when they say, do you actually have offsite backups? Well, if you put your offsite backups into the same cloud, that's not really an offsite backup, because what happens if all of that wouldn't be available? So having the ability to also store the backups in a completely different cloud provider, super important. You can do that. So the next part is, remember, that's the first click, the storage repository. That's the second click, the cold storage. You can then choose, well, where should that data go? As Alon already mentioned, AWS doesn't give you the option. They say, yeah, we know best. They don't. So standard S3, 50% cost savings right off the bat. If you're thinking I'm performing backups, I don't actually need them, it's just in case. Well, infrequent access, that's the right choice. That's a 75% savings. Glacier Flex, that would be your cold storage, and that's going to be a little bit better, 92. Deep Archive Glacier, gosh, we shouldn't even talk about this. This is the kind of stuff when you want to keep it forever. That's like super, super, super affordable. And what holds you back whenever somebody says Glacier Flex or Deep Archive Glacier, if you've ever looked at the recovery times, and this has nothing to do with us, this is just how AWS artificially slows down the recovery. The Glacier, that can be up to 12 hours, and Deep Archive Glacier, that can be up to 72 hours. Yeah, your math is right, that's 3 days. So there's another far more attractive storage tier. AWS Backup, never heard of that. But it is part of the AWS offering. It's just that they don't want to tell you about it, which is Glacier Instant Retrieve. It's Glacier with none of the disadvantages of Glacier Flex or Deep Archive Glacier. So that means I can instantaneously get to the data, and that's about a 90% savings. So you can see what this allows you to do. It's the flexibility of creating backups instantaneously available, and then ever increasingly colder storage tiers available as well. By the way, we can do the same thing for your RDS databases. Remember earlier when we talked about the really large databases? We can archive those. So that's the value. That's the value that you're presenting to your customers. They're not bound to what AWS or what Azure thinks they should be doing. They can actually use all of the features to their advantage. And that's the value that you're providing.
So our next super important, I think, is one of the reporting. How would you track, how is an MSP, track KPIs for your customers? Like, how do we make the reporting efficient and tailored to what the customer needs?
Well, what's better than information? It's actionable information, the right
Yep.
information. We'll show you how you can give each of your customers their own customized reporting. Remember when I mentioned true
Hmm.
multi-tenancy? So they can zero in on what actually matters to them, make security measurable, make your value undeniable, and prove without a shadow of a doubt why you're an irreplaceable part of their resilience strategy. And that's the reporting. Why would you not want to give them access to the console so they can create their own reports? It's one thing to have a report which says, yeah, all the backups occurred, but what about detailed reporting? What are we actually doing with it? What's being backed up? What's not being backed up? Let me show you how you can configure that real quick. We have a built-in reporting console within the product. So you go to reports, and remember when I mentioned everything has ownership? So I can assign this ownership to the different users. They wouldn't even be able to see each other's reports. They have their own detailed reporting console. There's two options: scheduled, we'll get to that in a moment, and then you have immediate report generation. Audit reports, who did what, when, and where within the console, and what did they change things to? Super important. Why wouldn't you want to give them access to that? Then backup policies. So you have your AWS backups, which backups are actually being produced, when were they produced, how long did it take? The policies themselves, will go into this in detail in a couple minutes as well. But protected resources. Of course, I want to have a report on everything that's being backed up. That's how I can prove value. Resource control. Are we turning things off when they're not needed? Snapshots. Are they full? Are they small? Because snapshots, if you have a 100 gig snapshot, yeah, AWS is going to tell you that's a 100 gig snapshot, but it doesn't tell you the detailed information on what is actually inside that snapshot, because these snapshots might just be 5 gigs full. So that's important information that they're withholding from you. Usage, what's actually being done with this product? What exactly are we backing up? Of course, we can do the same thing for Azure, there's no difference. But you can schedule these reports as well. Remember, you might have managed customers who want to have access to the console, but you can set this up for them. These are the most often used reports, these three right here. Dashboard. I'm telling you, executives love seeing green circles and green check marks. So why wouldn't I want to give them that peace of mind on a daily basis? So that's what I do here. I'm sending a PDF. It shows, okay, everything is fine. Green circles, green check marks. This is a super interesting one. Yes, I do have KPIs where I can show, yes, we're creating backups. These are the protected resources. But why wouldn't you want to see the opposite in reverse, the negative image to this? I want to see what is not being backed up. So no department head can come to me in 6 months and say, I had no idea we're not backing this up. Well, you should have had an idea because I've been sending out weekly reports. This is important stuff. You want to be able to see what is not being backed up. As a matter of fact, when you deploy this first off day one for a customer, why not run an unprotected resources report? Yes,
Yeah.
it's going to contain everything, but then you can say, well, this is what needs to be protected, and give your customers the freedom to say, well, yes, I want this, I don't want this. This is the report that you're providing to them. That's the
Yeah.
value.
This is where you're being more strategic with the MSP.
Exactly.
Yeah, of
Let's
course.
not dump everything into a backup policy. First off, give your customer the freedom to choose what do I
Yeah.
actually need,
Hmm.
and that's the report that's going to do it for you.
Yeah, makes sense. The last part, which is topic number 6, and again, super important, super relevant, is the compliance. I think we kind of touched it at the beginning. DORA, HIPAA, pretty much. We've been thrown a lot of acronyms in the past few months. Take us through that, like how NWS becomes your essentially platform to help your customer be more compliant, more secure when it comes to DORA and HIPAA, because we have a lot of MSPs that are catering for the finance, healthcare industries, and I think it's a super important one to kind of talk about as just before we end.
Absolutely. It's funny because you mentioned acronyms. Yes, I think we're at the point where you can just put any letters together and you're probably coming up with an acronym for one report
Yeah,
that you have to provide. Um, Compliance is great, but rapid compliance is even better. So take DORA, or as you mentioned, the latest HIPAA updates. You're
yeah,
smart enough to know things inevitably change. You've even managed to decode all that regulatory jargon. Congrats, by the way. But knowing and complying are two different beasts. You need a solution that provides rapid compliance right from day one. Imagine deploying a solution and immediately sleeping easier because you're not just fully compliant, but you can actually prove it. It's compliance with confidence. You deploy into AWS, and from day one, compliance isn't just met, it's mastered. And it's laughably easy how you can set this up. In order to set up my compliance, yes, I already have that console open. Of course, I have my reports. One of the things that I can also provide through the reporting, and I can schedule this. So if I have an auditor, I can put this into their inbox every 9 months, every 3 months, whatever their reporting requirement is. But I also have the option to provide them with other information, such as DORA is super on resilience. How quickly can I bounce back from an outage? Well, is there a report for that? Well, yeah, of course there is, because we do have the recovery scenarios. Recovery scenarios allows me to test not only do I have backups, but do these backups actually work? With the recovery scenarios, we have the ability to fine tune how it should fail over. We have the ability to define, are we actually going to spin it up, or are we going to use the more cost-effective dry run? Are we going to do some transaction testing, not just functionality testing? Yes, the database is up and running, but are we actually going to perform some testing on, can I make use of this database? And can my users actually get to the resources once they've failed over? So the recovery scenarios, that's what's going to give you that proof. And that is rapid compliance. That's compliance that I can use on day one for my DORA. I actually worked with some customers. I can't name any names here, but people who approached us after January 17th, who said, "Oh, Dora's been around, yeah, for over 2 years. It's just that now they're paying attention to that it's actually implemented. And can we implement this rather quickly?" Well, yes, that's what rapid compliance is. On day one, you can deploy into WS Backup and Recovery. On day one, it will create the reports. On day one, you can automate the recovery scenarios. And on day one, you can then provide your customer with the compliance reports, which prove that they're ready to go and that they are DORA compliant. And the same thing is going to happen now with the HIPAA compliance, which is they're going to talk about it in April, and then probably in May they're going to start implementing this, and then that's where fines are going to have to be paid. So this is what N2WS is going to do for you. It's going to provide you with compliance instantaneously, not, yeah, deploy it and then in a few months we'll see what it's going to do for you. No, this is day one, and this again is the value that you are providing. This is the peace of mind that you're providing to your customers.
That concludes essentially the sixth topic that we went through. I hope it was interesting and brought value. And obviously, we're inviting you to reach out to us or to your CSMs in order to kind of get a more personalized session if you want to kind of go through each of those. Of course, we're going to share the slide, we're going to share the video, so you kind of go back and see how it looks like in your console. And again, if there are any questions, we're here. Up next, we have 4.4, so it's a big version coming out that we're gonna communicate the date soon. It's a long and expected launch that we've been holding a lot of surprises for you in our next version. I'm very excited to do this one with you, Sebastian. So, we usually get a lot of excitement going on right there, and there's a lot of prizes and stuff that we're giving out usually on the releases. So, looking forward to see you. Anything before we end, Sebastian?
Oh, let me share my screen real quick. So yes, you don't want to miss that one, the release webinar 444. And we have to be very careful with the things that we're going to mention about 4.4 before we do the release webinar. All of the integrations, all of the partnerships that we're doing. There's some things we really shouldn't be showing. We shouldn't be showing a Wasabi dashboard because that might lead people to think, that they should be able to do things. Remember that granularity that we offered. And the other thing is, remember the accounts. Yes, AWS, Azure, cross-cloud capability. I think we really shouldn't be showing that you can also add other accounts now as well. And I know, I'm going to get in trouble with our marketing, but hey, it's worth it.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I really missed the sessions with you. Yeah, looking forward to doing 4.4 with you. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. And I hope you find this valuable. Of course, feel free to reach out and see you in 4.4, Sebastian.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun.
Bye. Thank you so much.